What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Around the Clock. Today, I'm going to give you an update as to where I'm at with my automotive journey. For those who are new to the channel, my name is John, and my personal goal is to own, experience, and modify as many unique cars as possible. I do apologize for the delay in videos as life just gets very busy, and obviously it does take time to kind of film, vlog, and edit all these videos. I did want to kind of give you guys an update from the last one, and if you didn't see the last video, I pretty much traded my speed yellow 997 Carrera 4S Aero car after making a bunch of cosmetic modifications. Ended up trading it for a 2016 Cayenne Turbo S and a 97 Subaru JDM STI Type R. After those cars, I ended up getting rid of the Cayenne for a fully built supercharged W204 pre-facelift C63 AMG, and I ended up selling the Subaru WRX STI for a Volvo S60R. Now, to kind of bring you guys up to speed on that, and for those who haven't seen the previous video, I had a 2004 Volvo S60R, and it was my dream spec, which is basically Sonic Blue with Atacama interior, which is orange. Beautiful spec, very well sorted car, both mechanically and cosmetically. Bought it from an enthusiast in New Jersey who I met through the Volvo pages on Facebook. The car wasn't even listed for sale. He just shared a photo of it. We stayed in touch for about 4 years. And then finally I was able to make an offer to him that was mutually beneficial, and I picked it up. So the car did have the factory sport kit, which is kind of rare to find on those cars still, altogether at least, because what ends up happening is people end up parting them out or something gets damaged, and then it's very hard to kind of find a replacement. But this had the entire OEM kit all together. And then I obviously made some cosmetic changes to it, which is what I enjoy doing the most. I did a Viva Performance center front lip. I did a Spoiler King rear wing just because the car had factory aero, and I felt like the factory wing on that car just looked a little too subtle and out of place with the factory sport kit. On a factory body, I think that it would fit just fine, but when it has a sport kit, I feel like it needs, a spoiler that kind of flows with the rest of the car. So I did a rear corner light delete, kind of. So the car has orange lighting in the corner. I ended up replacing the amber bulb with a bulb that has a chrome finish, so when it's off it looks like neochrome, but when you turn on your lighting it lights up orange as it should. And then to take it a step further, there was still an orange reflector on the corner of the light, and what I didn't want to do is take the headlight apart to pop that reflector out, because then you have to reseal it. You have to worry about it not sealing correctly. You could potentially get condensation, and also some states require the orange reflector to be there. So obviously if I remove it, that's going to be a problem. So I ended up getting with my local vinyl shop, kind of came up with a creative way to make it stand out and get the look across without having to take the headlights apart, which is he took a silver vinyl that he had that was in a very similar finish to the factory headlight housing, and he did kind of like a cut that wasn't straight across, but he kind of had it flow with the existing kind of lines of the headlights, so this way it was not very noticeable. And for most people didn't even notice that it was a vinyl wrap. Only when you get very close and you see it can you tell that it's just the vinyl. But absolutely love the way that car looked. I will say, when I bought that car, part of the appeal was all of the maintenance that was done. So for those who aren't familiar with those cars, I would say that they're very delicate. It's not a car that you can really beat on, especially if it hasn't been properly maintained or if it wasn't built for it. Because we are talking about, at this point, 20-year-old cars, and this platform, while a lot of people seem to like it, it does seem like a platform that seems to get neglected. And then the ones that do come out, are just kind of need a lot of TLC. So Part of the appeal of this one that I bought was the previous owner had it for 4 years, and it was his baby. It stayed in the garage, and he was constantly going through it and replacing all of the different things, which is the most important thing for that car. Now, to share my experience with it, mechanically, it drove great. It had about 92 or 93,000 miles on it, which is pretty low for an 04. But that being said, one day when I was driving to a local Cars and Coffee gathering, I parked the car, went to the show. As I went to leave, car fired up completely fine. As I start leaving, I merged onto the highway, and as soon as I gave it gas, the car started like sputtering and breaking up, and I noticed a bunch of white smoke coming out of the exhaust. So immediately I pulled over and shut the car off. Thankfully, the wife was behind me in the C63. She pulled over as well. And then, I shut the car off, turned it back on, started it up. Tons of white smoke came out the exhaust, so I immediately shut it off and called a tow truck. So once the tow truck arrived, I had it towed to my local independent shop, where they later determined that the block had cracked on the car. So for those who aren't familiar with the S60R platform, that 2.5 liter or white block is known for the heads to crack because they have very thin cylinder walls. And I just didn't expect it, just because, I thought the car was very well maintained, it wouldn't happen to it. The car did have full bolt-ons. It had an intake, downpipe, tune, and the block cracking is actually known even on factory examples. So I'm sure the tune and things like that didn't help, but it is what it is. So at that point, I kind of had a choice to make. And at the time of this happening, I actually had the car for sale. So I am glad that it happened during my ownership, because, I feel awful if I sold it to somebody and that happened, even though it's a known issue. So when that happened, I had a choice to make, right? Several choices. Do I park the car out? Do I sell it as is? Do I put another factory R motor in it? Or do I go, the safer route and do the Ford, I think it's 2.4 T5. So basically it's the 2.4 liter T5 from a newer Volvo S60, which has thicker cylinder walls, so it doesn't have, that issue of the block cracking. So realistically, the most inexpensive route for me would have been to just put another R motor in it. And while I could have parted the car out or sold it as is, I felt like it was such a clean example that I didn't want to see it, get taken apart or anything like that. Would love to still see it out and about. So, parting it out, selling it as is was no longer an option. So going back to what I was saying, I think that, the cheapest option and easiest option would have been for me to throw another R motor into the car. However, I had a hard time bringing myself to do that, because it's like, well, while the engine is out, why not spend the extra money and just put, the better motor in it, just so this way it might not make as much power, but it'll be a lot more reliable and solid. So that is the route that I decided to go. I engaged with some of the guys on the Volvo forum, guys and gals, and identified a local person who is known in the community for, carrying these motors in New Jersey. So I went out there, picked up the engine, and then dropped it off to my local shop and had them do the swap. And if this ever happens to you, just know that it is a direct swap. You should obviously get it tuned after doing that. I've heard of people that do the swap and they don't tune it. I want it to be right. So I ended up doing the swap. I bought the better motor. I think the only difference between the R motor and the 2.4 T5 was the oil pan, because of there's like a sensor, I guess, on one of them and not the other. But aside from swapping that over, it was a direct bolt-in swap. And after I did the swap, the car ran and drove completely fine. But to take it a step further to make it safe for the next person, I ended up taking the car to Carlisle And if you haven't been there and you're a Volvo enthusiast, I would highly recommend it. It's probably one of the biggest Volvo gatherings that I've ever attended. And there's a lot of other cool, unique platforms, like there's Saabs and all types of vehicles there at the Carlisle show. But once I went to the show, I ended up meeting with a local, reputable tuner in the Volvo community. His name was Alex Sanders. And while I had the car there, he ended up detuning the car because it did have a Hilton Stage 2 Plus tune, which I can't say was the direct cause of, the car blowing up. I don't think that it helped, considering that, these blocks can crack on factory boost. But I told Alex Sanders I wasn't concerned about making a ton of power. I just wanted it to be safe. So he ended up detuning the car, and then it ran and drove perfectly, no issues, sounds amazing. What I think the issue was is the previous tune is at wide open throttle, it would throw a ton of boost at the car, like immediately. There was very minimal turbo lag, and I just don't think that was good for the motor. After he detuned it, there was noticeable turbo lag, but to me it kind of made the driving experience a little more fun. I mean, at the end of the day, that car was not a go-fast car for me anyway. It was just kind of, I love the look of those cars, and then I love the sound of that unique 5-cylinder turbo. So after doing the swap, I ended up listing the car for sale. After having it on Marketplace for a while, not really getting any serious buyers, I decided to put the car on Cars and Bids, and where it did very well, and I ended up selling it for $18,000, which I think is a very fair number. I was still upside down, especially because I did the engine swap. I probably, lost a substantial amount of money, but that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I felt a lot better knowing that that car was going out to someone, and knowing that, I did the right thing by putting the better motor in it, so it's solid to go. So I will say that experience was definitely unique, and I've never had to put an engine in a car before, so it was kind of new to me, and it was kind of nerve-wracking, but thankfully the Volvo community is very supportive, and also my local independent shop is very great to work with, and he kind of sent me texts and updates throughout the process, so that went a long way for me. So after selling the car, I kind of just decided to just, hang on to the money, just chill, and not really jump into something else. I still had the Supercharged C63. So to kind of talk about that car, if you didn't see the last video, it's a 2010 W204 pre-facelift C63 AMG. And if you aren't familiar with those cars, from the factory, they come with a naturally aspirated 6.2 liter V8. Those motors sound absolutely amazing. They tend to veer towards cars from the kind of early to mid 2000s era over the newer stuff with like turbos and everything. Not to discount them, but it's just personal preference. And for me, I've always liked the C63 when they came out, but as we know, a lot of cars have their known issues, and with the M156 motor, it is the head bolts and the lifters. But every time I would look for one, I didn't see them addressed, so I just never got around to owning one. Finally came around, got the opportunity to pick one up, and then the one that I did get just so happened to have a fully built motor and a Weisstech Stage 2 supercharger. So the car was making around 800 horsepower, crank horsepower is around 700 wheel on MS 103 fuel. And for those who know me and you've seen my videos, you know that aesthetics take priority for me. I'm not really concerned about the performance and driving really fast. I'm just kind of like a guy that likes to make cosmetic changes. I like to keep my cars clean, and then I just like to cruise and do cars and coffee type gatherings versus doing a rally or something that involves high speed driving. It's just not my jam. So I had the car, it was very well sorted. I mean, this thing was purpose-built, and for those who have never heard one, it is probably the loudest car I've ever owned, and to be honest with you, it's kind of obnoxious to me. So those cars from the factory have a very aggressive cold start. When you start it up, that initial bite is very aggressive, and you add headers and an X pipe, and then no resonators, no mufflers, anything like that. It's just crazy loud. At least to me it was. I mean, even driving around normally, if you touch the gas, it is just so loud. But that's what it was built for. If you pop the rear trunk, it actually had the cooling tank to make sure that you keep your temps down, which is very important, especially with those cars, and especially when you start upgrading the performance. You definitely want to make sure that you're keeping that car cool or heat soaking. So mechanically, it was pretty well sorted. I did make some cosmetic changes to it. I ended up adding, it had a carbon fiber front lip, a rear diffuser, and a wing. I just added the side skirt extensions, the carbon rear side splitters, just to kind of have everything flow, together. I believe I replaced the front grille with a gloss black one. The one that it came with was matte black. Also, some of the trim on the car, on the exterior, was wrapped in like this carbon vinyl, which I'm not a fan of, so I removed all that and replaced it all with gloss black trim. And then in the rear, I did all new gloss black emblems, because those were all like matte black. On the inside, it was pretty much stock, but the wood trim, some of the wood trim was wrapped in carbon vinyl. Not a huge fan of that. Ended up removing it all just to have it all the same finish, which is like some sort of wood. But yeah, that car was a beast. I mean, it was so fast, and I'm not a go fast guy, but when you have a car like that, it's hard to not push it once in a while and just experience that. But while it was an amazing car, a good friend of mine, Wes, who I often talk about in my videos here, he's probably my closest friend. He at the time had a very clean E92 BMW M3. And I mean, just money spec with slicer spec, E88s, APR big brake kit. It's a club sport build. And one day we were hanging out, and he asked me if I wanted to drive it. So we swapped cars. He drove the C63, I drove the E92, and I fell in love with it. I've owned a lot of BMWs in the past, but I've never owned an E90 or E92 M3. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's a high revving V8. The S65 is an amazing sounding engine. DCT trans was buttery smooth, and it just felt very nimble, and it felt a lot more engaging than the C63. Even though my C63, it had obviously the mechanical modifications, the fully built engine, everything like that, and the transmission also had like the Weiss Tech competition package, but even at that, I would say that the transmission still felt sluggish compared to a modern day DCT. So at that point, I decided that I want to experience an E92 M3 for myself, but I'm gonna have to sell the C63 in order to fund the E92 M3. So I had it on Marketplace for a while, didn't get any real serious offers, and then I decided that maybe I should put this car on a forum, as usually people that take the time to go on forums are true enthusiasts, versus Marketplace is just people that have a social media account and they have access to it. So you get a lot of tire kickers and people that aren't really serious. It's just kind of there, and you get people trolling and things like that. But after I decided to put it on a Mercedes forum, I think I found MB World. Apparently I had an account from way back in the day when I had my either W211 E55s or some of my old S55 AMGs, all M113K cars, which is the supercharged 5.4 liter V8. Once I was able to get back into my account and I went into the Marketplace, I ended up coming across a car that caught my attention. And the car that caught my attention was a 2007 E63 AMG Wagon. Now, I will say that, I felt like I'm an enthusiast and I'm, very familiar with a lot of different platforms, but I never knew that they made the W211 or S211 chassis E63 in a wagon. I didn't even know they made the E55 wagon either. So I came across this car, and as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to have the car because I just thought it was super unique. As you guys know, I do have 2 young kids and family, so having something that is as practical as a wagon but still fun and unique and rare is very kind of uncommon to find. I mean, there are a bunch of really cool wagons out there like the CTSV, RS6, but when you talk about uncommon, I think that the E63 was definitely a unique platform. So I ended up reaching out to the seller and asked if he was actually interested in the trade for the C63, as the price that he had it listed for was the same that I had the C63 listed for, but he respectfully declined. He actually also had a W211 E63 on LMs, and then he also had an E92 M3 on E88s, and the reason he was selling the wagon is to get into an AMG GTR in Mars Red, which he did buy. So after offering him that and he declined, I said no problem, I'll reach back out if I can sell my car and you still have the wagon. So I ended up selling the C63 shortly after to a gentleman in Virginia Beach that was just looking for something unique and fast, but not breaking the bank. And I'd say for what the car sold for, it was a lot of car for the money, and it ended up going to a good home and somebody that would drive it for what it was intended to be driven for. And after that, reached back out to the owner of the wagon, and we were able to come up to a deal. And then my buddy Wes and I jumped in a car one day after work and shot over to New York and picked up the car. So that is what's actually sitting behind me now, and I'll kind of go over the details and maybe do a separate video just kind of going around it and all those things. But this is a 2007 E63 AMG wagon. It is the S211 chassis, which is basically the wagon version of the W211, which is the sedan. And for those who aren't familiar with these cars, part of the appeal to me is, as I mentioned before, is as a family, right? It's kind of tough to find something that's fun, that's unique and uncommon, but can still comfortably accommodate a family. So my wife and I have been talking about getting into a new vehicle that basically has like 3rd row seats, just because my kids are at an age right now where once in a while they'll want to take their friends places. And our current SUV does not have 3rd row seats. And with this car, not only did I fall in love with the aesthetics, once I looked in the back, I did notice that it did have the 2 rear jump seats. Now, these cars didn't come with them, as far as I'm aware of. I believe it came out of a different model, but the previous owner had actually retrofitted everything in the back to accommodate the rear jump seats in the back. So it does have 2 rear-facing seats with OEM seat belts and seatbelt clips and everything like that. So technically it is a 7-seater. I haven't put 7 people in the car yet, but it's kind of cool to know that that option is there. To give you a little background on these cars, if you're not familiar with them, the E63 wagons, they made them from 2007 to 2009. And within those 3 years, they only made 153 for the US. And in 07, they only made 67 of them. So this car is one of 67, which makes it very uncommon to see. The previous owner had done a lot of work to it, both mechanically and cosmetically. It seemed like the person that he got it from, there was just a lot of little things that needed to be replaced, and that's what he really focused on. But modification-wise with the car, it does, engine-wise, it has a Rentec carbon fiber airbox. Otherwise, that's pretty much stock. I did do a resonator delete on the car because I did want to give it a little bit more of an exhaust tone. I didn't want it overwhelmingly loud, especially after having that C63, and I felt like the resonator delete kind of gave me that little bit of exhaust tone that I wanted, because at the end of the day, this isn't a race car, this is a wagon, it's a cruiser, and I don't want it to be obnoxiously loud ever again. I never want a car as loud as that C63. That was just a bit much for me. But jumping into the modifications that have been done to this car, it does have all new air struts. So for those who aren't familiar with these platforms, they do have air suspension. Some of the other AMGs have what's called ABC, which is active body control, and that's hydraulic. But these have factory air suspension, and thankfully these cars have been around for a while. And when I say these cars, I'm just referring to Mercedes with air suspension. So there are aftermarket solutions. One of the most well-known is R-Not. They make remanufactured ones, and this car has 4 all-new struts that were replaced within the last 2 years or so. So they're all fresh. It does have what's called the Lomo module, and that is how you can actually adjust the suspension height. And you can actually just hold a button on the steering wheel, and on the factory cluster you'll have suspension pop up, and then you'll have the option to either lower or raise the suspension through that. It is not like an aftermarket system like an Airlift 3P where you have a controller and it immediately goes up and down. You know, you do have to kind of set it and just sit there and wait for everything to adjust. But that's okay, because there is a height that I do like. I like to put it on the ground, obviously, when it's parked. And it doesn't go super low, but it looks low enough. And then for driving height, you know, I usually ride it with no wheel gap. But it does ride very well. That's kind of the beauty about having air suspension, is the ride quality is definitely there. Also with this car, the thing that stood out to me that I love the most is it obviously has a set of BBS LMs. Staggered 19 by 8.5 in the front, 9.5 in the rear. And these are, you know, one of my favorite wheels to have in general. And then some of the other things that he did were a little more subtle, like on the interior it does have a Black Series steering wheel. It also has a Dynavan head unit, aftermarket radio with CarPlay. He also did all new door speakers on the inside with a subwoofer, but it all looks OEM. And that's pretty much like cosmetically what he had done to the car. Like I said, he replaced a lot of like little factory things like trim pieces that were broken and little things here and there. But when I got the car, you know, then I started to add, you know, my touches to it as well. So to kind of run you through the things that I've done to this car so far is I replaced the front center grille. It wasn't cracked or anything, it just had, you know, years of wear, and you can just see a bunch of like little nicks in the grille. So I decided to replace that. I also did replace the front lip that was on the car. So it had a carbon fiber front lip, but it had some damage on the lower driver side. So I ended up replacing it with a different style that I thought looked a little more cleaner for the look I was going for. And in addition to that, I also did the carbon fiber side skirt extensions and carbon fiber rear side skirt extensions. Now, the thing with the wagons is they don't make a ton of parts specifically for the wagon, especially because they were just limited production AMG wise. I believe like the standard models like your E300, E320, E350, things like that, whether it be in the US and other countries, they did make a lot of the wagons, but not as many AMG wagons. So I would imagine that the market's probably not there enough to justify coming up with you know, carbon bits for that. But the good news is everything that's on this car is from a sedan. It all bolts up pretty good. I will say that the front lip, you know, direct bolt on, fits just like a sedan. The only thing that's like slightly off are the side skirt extensions, and I mean it is just the slightest bit longer than the sedan, but it's not very noticeable. And then, you know, the rear side splitters, those actually work on it too. The only thing that I'm kind of on a search for is a rear diffuser, and there are a couple people that have them. It does seem like some people in the wagon community are gatekeeping though, you know, they're not really willing to share exactly how they got it to work, but it seems like people have bought a rear diffuser from a sedan and modified the diffuser and the bumper to get it to fit, which is fine. However, the only thing to keep in mind with the car is because it's such limited production, The problem is finding replacement parts, right? So they don't make this rear bumper anymore. So, you know, the thought of cutting into it is kind of nerve-wracking. Even though I know if I did it, I wouldn't reverse it. But I haven't gotten there yet. Maybe one day I'll get to the point to where I'll just say screw it and, you know, have a shop, you know, fit the diffuser to the car just so it looks like it fits and it's meant to be there. So that's, you know, a path that I'll cross later. But I also tinted the windows of this car. I did 20% all the way around. I also did the Thule Motion 3 cargo box in large. And to take it a step further, I did have it partially wrapped in like a chrome vinyl, just because I thought that the chrome would contrast well against the factory chrome trim and also the silver BBS LM wheels. I also did a rear wing, and I will say this, it is a universal wing, and before you flame on me, hear me out. So I tried looking for a wing for the wagon, but because it's such an uncommon platform that people don't really modify, there were no options at all. And when I typed in S211, you know, Mercedes wagon wing, this universal one is the only one that comes up. And even though it's universal, if you look at the ad, it does have a picture of the S211 wagon, just not on it. And you know, for the cost of it, I figured I will just try it out. I'll mount it to it with some 3M just to see if I like the way it looks. And if I like the way it looks, I'll secure it on there. And if I don't, I'll just take it off. It's quite simple as that. And the wing actually looks pretty good on the car, in my opinion. I think it flows well with everything else that's going on the car. Ended up doing the rear wing. Previous owner also did like he had a dash cam that was wired in for the front and rear. Aside from that, it's just been like some maintenance, you know, that I've done outside of just, you know, oil changes. As I mentioned before, I did do a resonator delete, and when I had it up in the air, we did notice that the rear brake lines were rusted out. So I had them all replaced with copper lines, and then also the rear caliper brake line, that's rubber, was dry rotting. So I had both of those replaced as well. Otherwise, the car has been pretty solid. Recently, I did replace like the alternator, serpentine belt, thermostat housing. You know, I've done like pretty basic maintenance, I would say, on it, or just items that are going to wear at its current mileage, which I didn't share. This car has 143,000 miles currently, but you know, aside from all those things, I did do paint correction and ceramic coating, which I do with all of the cars. And otherwise, it's been an amazing car. I actually like it so much that for those who follow the channel or know me, you know my tag says for sale. And the thought process behind that is like everything's for sale for the right price. But I enjoy this car so much that I am actually considering transferring that tag to my wife's vehicle and doing something special that is vehicle specific. And usually I don't do vehicle specific tags just because after I modify them, I usually tend to either sell or trade them for a different experience. But I like this car so much that, you know, I am considering a you know, specific vanity tag for the car that's fitting for it. But I do have something very special planned for it, and I'm in the works accumulating parts for it as we speak. But that will be for another video, and I'll save that video to kind of you know, maybe take the time to go around it and show you around, go out for a drive in it, and just kind of show you and share what my thoughts are about the car as a whole. But that is pretty much where I'm at now. I only have this car. I don't have two cars anymore, but just this one car. I do have a little Moto Compacto that I picked up. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's a little tiny Honda scooter that's the more modern version of the Moto Combo, I believe is what it was called. And then the Moto Compacto is kind of like the newer version, and it's electric. But it's basically cool looking to me because, you know, it folds all up and looks like a little briefcase. Now, it's not super light. It's like 43 pounds, but if you buy one, they all look the same. They're all white with brown handles and a brown seat. And, you know, for me, liking to kind of tinker with things, I wanted to kind of build the Moto Compacto to match the wagon. So I ended up, first I had it wrapped in gloss black, and then I did the Honda lettering in chrome. I replaced the grips with black ones, and then I actually did a black seat. It's actually a seat cover, but it looked pretty cool, but I didn't like the wrap. I think if a lot of the times when people put vinyl wraps on the Moto Compactos, they just put it on the side flat surface, and you know, it sticks well then, but if you start trying to wrap the edges and things like that, sometimes it can lift, and it just bothered me. So I ended up removing the wrap and actually having the entire thing painted in gloss black. So it's only been painted gloss black for maybe a week now, so I believe I have to wait another few weeks before I can have it PPF'd, and I'm just gonna do the sides of it just to help protect it. And of course I gotta ceramic coat it, because why not, right? But I thought that the Moto Compacto turned out really well. It looks definitely different, especially compared from the ones that you normally see right out the box. Most people leave them alone. Sometimes people will get these vinyl kits and put them on it, but you know, I think to take it a step further, I thought painting it would be really cool and unique. But aside from the Moto Compacto and the wagon, I don't really have any other toys. I just have my daily driver Prius, and the wife still has her SUV, but you know, still enjoying unique stuff. And you know, the whole purpose of this is to kind of share my experience with you guys, and just kind of what it's like to experience these different unique platforms. But for now, at least you're up to date as to kind of what I currently have, and in the next video I will share with you you know, the details of this car, but also what I have planned for it, which I think is going to make this car very, very special. So that is pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, consider liking and subscribing. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.